which had something like 455 AMU, right, which is like not any element in our near universe. Okay, and when these things blow up, they throw out a load of packets of alpha particles. So like it's a bit weird. It's like and they've already verified the SV Adamenko work. They brought it in 2015 to America. $4 million appeared out of nowhere. So they set up this thing called Proton Scientific. It was verified between 2015 and 2017, and then it became part of the National Nuclear Fusion Program. And they took down the Proton Scientific website. After moving the entire lab from the old isotopic factory outside of Kiev in Ukraine and verifying it. Yeah. And this experiment, it was using the old Soviet method from the 1950s of nuclear synthesis, artificial nuclear synthesis. And he set up the lab, and he started experimenting in 2001. It worked the first time, and he had 10,000 experiments sequentially in a line that worked 100% of the time. And he had all of the samples from the impacts, and he challenged anyone in the world to come and check. And the US did. And it's
question for you on the same lines, Bob. So a lot of people in UFOlogy, I've learned, are saying that a lot of the stuff they're seeing, orbs, whatever, are human made. Do you think that would account for the more and more sightings we've seen over the years as well? Thank you, Ben.
So at this time of year, you should see more of these type of phenomena. So I'm just specifically talking about between December the 10th and December the 14th, when there is a lens alignment between Betelgeuse, the Earth, and the black hole, so-called thing at the center of our universe. And this increases the relic flux. And in fact, we had our first successful experiment on December the 12th. And it wasn't until I looked at Joe Parr's work from the 1980s or something, 90s, that he identified this time in the year when there was the celestial and black hole and alignment that allowed for this increased flux of relic neutrinos, although he didn't attribute to relic neutrinos, but that's what happens. And so, sorry, what was the question again?
So, it's really about just like the frequency of these sightings of these UAPs.
So what happens when you've got
some of them ours, and that's what we're seeing more? Go ahead.
Yeah, so relic neutrinos do not ordinarily leave the sun. Okay, because they haven't got the escape velocity. They don't travel fast enough to escape the sun's velocity. But when you have certain things like a big sunspot or whatever, or a coronal mass ejection, they can have an increased flux that comes out. And at those points, you get interactions with the atmosphere, likely, that would lead to an increased level of sighting. So it's like partly based on space weather. It's based on these auspicious, yes, it's the phase of the moon, and yes, it's the alignment of the stars and the asteroids and whatever. These things really do matter in this space. And I never ever mocked these kind of beliefs that ancient people had, but I wasn't actively thinking they had any value. And now I've had to learn to eat a lot of humble pie about things like crystals, about things like meditation and the lotus position and the humming and everything. All of these things that I thought was a little bit woo-woo, and really I'm just a scientist and I'm looking at things under the microscope, and that's true. And I know that that's true. But these things that these ancient people said and these symbols they used, I've had to eat a lot of humble pie, really, because they knew their stuff. And so it is about circumstance. So if there are a lot more sightings and they're natural, so for instance, in Hessdalen in Norway, that was one of the areas in the world that produced the most long-lived luminous objects in the sky, and they could be from a couple of tens of centimeters across to the size of a house. And there was a whole period, I think, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, where you would have very, very regular every summer. And I've identified that during the summer in Norway is when you have the peak humidity. So the carrying capacity of water vapor in the air is at peak when you see most of these structures in the air. Now, what they've identified is it's a mining area. They produce like copper and zinc and lead, and I don't know. There's a whole range of elements. I might have got those wrong, but essentially there is a sulfurous stream that runs down, and so the whole valley is basically like a freaking big battery with electrostatic potential. Okay, you have that with the humidity in the air, and you have also quartz in the ground, and you have thermal shifting between the summer and the winter, and you get all of the environments for creating this natural effect. However, as the mining has changed and the sulfur nature of the river has changed, you then start to maybe get a loss in these ball lightning structures. And so there are natural processes that produce these. Now, when you're looking at somewhere like Area 51 or somewhere like this, and you see a lot of these glowing balls running around in the sky, or remote, distant areas where you might have a base that would be a great place to do these things, okay, they might be man-made. And so, like, I think the majority of luminous objects that are seen in the sky are natural phenomena, right? But what if we're to believe MH? Sorry, you've gone silent. You muted. Sorry, Ashton, you're muted.
Sorry, I just I hit your microphone.
So I was muted. Yeah, so just even if they're natural, right? Like the issue is like that doesn't explain why you'd see more over time. So I guess my question is like from what I've learned even just today, but going back to it, that we might have unlocked this stuff 30, 40, 50 years ago or even before that. Like, do you think it makes sense that we would see more and more over the last 80 years because countries are figuring it out? They're building their drones
I
that are
think
using
it's
this
like
type of
this.
technology.
Do you think we're having a bad year in fires in the California?
I moved away from California, so I couldn't say.
Okay, but the reality is, I think if I'm right in saying this, this is
variables.
the lowest number of fires in California in a long period of time.
Yeah.
But you have a factor of there being a lot more people on the planet. So if you go back to let's say when I was born, 1972, what was there in the planet? 2-3 billion. There's now 8-9 billion. I don't know, but like it's hard to catch up, right? So firstly, you got more people. Then who could afford a camera? There's almost no one that could afford a camera. Then who could afford to disseminate their experience? Almost no one. There wasn't a means for dissemination of experience. And then who are keenly aggregating this information?
Just ridicule.
And who is aggregating this information and giving it, amplifying it? Now there are people that spend their life scraping every single section of the internet and personal and whatever for anything that even closely looks like this. So it's not necessarily that the incidence has increased. It's that the ability of them to be packaged into units of information and spread widely has increased.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, just early today, I was doing what you were just mentioning. It was just scraping the internet, found this LAX video of these, like, it looks like 3 perhaps distinct orbs that, not like the MH370 videos, because it looks like an actual physical structure, not necessarily like a non-radiating barrier, but still really interesting because it makes me wonder, like, okay, is this, I'm just going to speak freely here. Are these like China's orbs and they're spying on Air Force One? Are these our orbs that we're using to defend the plane? Or is this just really a balloon? Like,
you have to ask the questions with the Foo Fighters, because the Foo Fighters never did anything. They just followed planes. They just followed planes. Were they an intimidation tactic of a technology that no one really knew how to use during the Second World War? Right?
Yeah.
I don't think they were alien. I think they were early implementations of this technology. And I think after the Second World War, these things were started to look at as practical defense technologies. And that is what I think my father showed me in 1979 when I was 7 years old.
How? Because,
it's scary because it's so old. Go ahead.
You need to cross 2 laser beams to sort of create...
No, you don't need to cross 2 laser beams. You need to cross 2 electromagnetic waves, which in them have phase conjugation of 280 degrees out of phase electromagnetic waves. So you don't need to see these things. They can be microwaves, they could be gigahertz, they could be...
The klystron was invented in 37.
Yeah, but the klystron is a trigger for a nuclear weapon.
So if you had, but it was also used to detect submarines too.
Okay.
We need material science though to pull it off, right? I mean, getting 2 matter waves or any waves into sync, that's the difficult part, right?
What they had with 1940s technology
produces these structures.
I'm just trying to think back to 1940s technology and what they had to be able to produce Foo Fighters. If
that's the hardest part I have to get through, right?
Oh, you mean in 1940s?
Europe.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, so in 1930, what was it? 1932, you have the electrical particles of matter drawings. If you go to our Facebook, you'll be able to find the drawings from Tesla if you don't know where else to get it. So that was 1932. You have his claim that he could do this, basically what would describe as an anti-gravity craft in 1911. You don't think that these people were not researching this. If you look at the 1903 designed Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, it literally has phase conjugation waves above the top mirror with a toroid in the center where the crossing of the beams are, right? And below that, it has a yin-yang, making a yin-yang, making a yin-yang, a wheel within a wheel within a wheel, with the golden ratio sacred geometry structure defining the windows of the Supreme Court that was designed in 1903. So the idea that this wasn't known, and in Tesla's 1935 press photo for the New York Times, when he was promoting the weapon to end all wars, and he says the energy for this comes from a surprising source, right? It creates an invisible Chinese wall, i.e. chi, as in light.
Oh, lost him.
Hey, where'd he go?
Government took him down. Said peace.
Oh my God, dude, too much close to the truth, dude.
Yeah, a little too close. Flew a little close, too close to the sun on that one.
Every time. Disconnect.
Wow.
Bob, hopefully you're still there.
What's your guys'
I
little
wanted
thing
to
that
ask him about this whole vortex tubes kind of stuff. I wanted to ask him about the thunderstorm generator, Malcolm Bendall. I want to show my friends patents and sort of give that away. I don't know if he's ready.
Do you think they could deploy this from a submarine, or do you think like a satellite or like a plane?
He was mentioning both satellites and dishes, and essentially, right, if you have the satellite above the microwave or antenna array from an island or from a base close.
What about on a ship?
Yeah, ship, definitely. That's what they have with their Aegis. Their shield, right? This missile shield potentially could be.
So that's how you could point it at the thing you want it to go to, maybe? Interesting.
The laser-based weapons experiment.
This is the guy I wanted to show, man. The work of Luigi Giovanni Valiero Rota in 1886 to 1951 is when he died. He built friggin' electric planes, man, and back in like early 1900s. And really some interesting work.
Yeah, it really feels like this has been suppressed for a long time, potentially. I mean, that's the part that scares me the most, especially when we were talking to Bob about the technology, and he's talking about might have this in the 40s. I'm like, so that was 90 years ago. So we've been hiding this kind of technology for 90 years. Like, lots
of technology, man. If you notice one thing about the UFO narrative, everything they've put in front of Congress, everything they've put out in the mainstream, all of it's been completely absent of the real science and the technology. And the people in the channels that are talking about it, few and far between. We have trolls in the chat saying this is all bullshit and these people don't know what they're talking about constantly. And you also have no coverage of it whatsoever. We're the most, like, we're shadow banned to all hell. My channel has 115,000 subscribers, and we barely like crack the viewership that there's channels with less than 10,000 subscribers, new channels that are getting way like more views than that. And the channel it doesn't reach the people complain that, hey, I ring the bell, I've subscribed to your channel, I don't get notifications, I don't know when you're going live. I have to go and search my subscriptions to find your videos. Like the YouTube algorithms running operations behind the scenes. Twitter was caught doing the same kind of thing when it was under its old ownership. Now that it's under the new ownership, we've got some freedom of speech on that platform. YouTube is not the best with it. It unfortunately.
So Facebook literally made me deleted on its own over 100 of my first videos that I ever posted because I had www.alienscientist.com in the descriptions. It was like, this goes against community guidelines.
Yeah,
I got ahead of the game. I deleted my Facebook preemptively.
And it's interesting that what did get in front of Congress at these congressional hearings on UFOs was stuff from a guy who's promoted a hoaxer as a scientist and been out in the mainstream promoting nothing but hoaxes, and then they could put all that stuff in front of Congress, debunk it all, and then say like, oh, this is all nonsense. It's like people don't see the dog and pony show and that's been played for them in front of the public. I've been screaming this for years now that like this is not like, this is a fake. Everything you see down there in that city, Washington, D.C. is fake. It's faker than any science, like any pseudoscientist on the internet right now.
Jeremy, I'll give you a very specific example. And sorry, my battery probably gave you a breather from my battery.
I want to get into. I have more questions too.
A specific example on the censorship. on, I think, March the 20th, 2020, I produced a video on using EGCG in green tea to prevent colds and flus. The reason being that a University of Florida study in 2017 had shown that if you just drink green tea, you have a 30% reduction in respiratory conditions, right? Just green tea, right? Then if you have zinc, they've done studies, I think in 2000s or early 2010s, where if you have zinc and you have a ionophore, that you can decrease massively the viral replication in cells, in vitro and in vivo, okay? And so I published this with the references, okay? Almost no views. Then about a year and a half later, this suddenly became, it's suddenly gone through that mean knowledge where everyone started thinking that you can have a zinc ionophore and zinc, and it would reduce your path of the progression of a respiratory condition. And what happened is it went from like 1 or 2 views every other day to maybe to a week, to it literally went up vertically. In 2 days, it went up vertically, and it had like 4,000 views like in 1.5 days. And the line, when you look at it, it was just straight up. It's like someone had drawn the line wrong on the YouTube chart. And then immediately I got YouTube saying, "You've broken YouTube's community guidelines, and we are suspending this video." And I'm thinking, it's been up for a year and a half, and now I've broken the guidelines. And you know what happened? I wrote to them and said, this is based on current operation science that's published in peer-reviewed journals. There is no justification for bringing this down. And you know what? They reinstated it. And it's barely had a view in the year and a half since.
Well,
you mess with the pharma companies, man. That's what happens, you know.
I'm gonna get banned. This video just got banned and flagged for uncensored just for mentioning that. But by the way, we're not giving anyone health advice. There's no health advice being given.
I didn't give any health advice, and I didn't refer to any remedies for a particular condition.
He has to say that legally, so he doesn't get context. Real quick, alien scientist, Jeremy. I think the thing too, I want to just echo what you mentioned earlier, is that we have these congressional hearings, right? And what's all the headlines? Oh, alien bodies or whatever. Like, where are the headlines on the science, the fabric of reality breaking science that's being hidden from us, right? Like, they don't ever talk about the technology side of it.
Ashton,
it's all just
scraps to sate the masses.
Yeah, exactly.
The hilarious point about it, scraps is already in the public record from 1979. It's like, it's just a freaking joke.
That's crazy that this is a 1979 NASA document. It's right
you
there.
Read it. It literally says everything they've been revealing in these congressional testimonies.
They've not revealed anything yet. Jake, Matt, thanks for the $5 super chat. The TR-3B, those lights, according to Ed, those were actually thrusters or rocket engines. That he said the inside accelerator ring only reduced 85% of the ship's weight, and the rest had to be pushed around with these rocket engines. So those lights, I believe, were actually
they could be a fractal toroidal structure inside those spheres as a controlled plasma, and you can vector them in the same way that the orbs are being in Ashton's videos, right? And
that was my videos, huh? The world's videos, Bob.
Personally, well done. You're an excellent CG artist. Well done, Ashton.
Some people think that, though. Some people think I made them.
Yeah. Okay. The videos that Ashton had found from 2014 that he's given airtime to. The point is that you can vector those individual orbs, but it's the same reason you have 3 on the MH370. Why? Because that defines a vector of travel through the 3 points. Mm-hmm. It's the minimum. If you only have 2, it's like if I point in a different direction, I always end up spinning.
That's why I think it's getting pulled back, because like you said, it's defining a vector, it's creating a plane in 2-dimensional space, right?
Yeah.
So then it makes me wonder, like, okay, is the direction of travel going to be, perpendicular to that, reverse of that? And in the video, especially the drone video, you can see like the tail of the plane sticking out from the center of the singularity. And it makes me wonder, it looks like it's getting yanked backwards a little bit. And that's why I like Dave's idea of there being a 4th orb where it's getting pulled back. I don't know if it's required based on what you've said, but that's why I've been asking you coyly about, how you would control some type of propulsion like this. Would you just turn off the
You
electrons
control it in
feeding
exactly
it, right?
the way you witnessed the smaller quanta being controlled
Mm-hmm.
when they were being brought towards the plane. It's not complicated. It's like
So you can have full control.
I've got a car and then I bolt 3 cars together and I'm moving the whole lot together, but I'm only using the same kind of internal combustion engine. It's you're using the same mechanism to move them around as you did the quanta below.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool.
Not complicated.
So because your way of thinking would have me think, okay, you can move it anywhere you want, right? You have full control over it, just like they have the orbs. Like the way Dave and Sal talked about it makes me think more of like the rubber band, where it's like you got to have something ready to go, and then you just let it go, and that's where it's going to show up. So that's what I've been trying to unify.
The fourth potentially could also be 6, right? 3 and 3.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, definitely.
I actually think that's more likely of the two, but it's totally unnecessary.
Yeah. So yeah, okay.
Hey Bob, it's Gerald here. Speaking of unnecessary,
Gerald.
I was going to ask you the 3 vectors that are surrounding it. Could you actually, would it be possible to have 12?
You can have up to 48, but it's pointless. Like if you want to make your job harder and control 12 rather than 3, but 2 will not do the job. 3 will do the job. You do not need 4.
But wouldn't 12 give you more of a finer control?
No.
No? Okay, fair enough.
No, because you've statistically got a lot more problems with having 12. When it comes to the alien reproduction vehicle and the flying disc of the sky gods, right? 48 is optimal, as you don't get any bleed out of the gravitational waves locally. You still get the gravitational vector through the center, but you don't have, with 48, their non-radiating boundaries push and pull against each other so that they don't try and collapse the object that's inside. You know what I mean? It's already a stable toroid.
I have to bring up Ed Lead Scallan's flywheel is actually that 48, 24 and 24, right? 24 positive north, 24 south. It's 48.
Okay,
well that would make sense, but okay, well there you go.
But now if you have your surrounding vectors, or there's say 12 around your toroid, it's going in one direction as the center of your toroid is going in the absolute opposite direction. So wouldn't that give you more of a control than it would?
No. So you need to think about when you make the fractal toroid at the fractal level above, you have to rotate the subtoroids at 90 degrees. It's just how electrodynamics works. Okay, they have to be at 90 degrees, the curl and stuff. So
I got that.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, no, I understood that. I meant that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's only when you link those gravitational waves together do you get the gravitational vector through the center, and that will pull those in. And it's exactly what you see on the video, and it's what you, and they will pull in to the point at which their fields are attracting and repelling. They're likes. They likes, the same as Feynman used to describe. It's a self-organizing principle where they like to attract each other to the distance at which another force that's embedded in them causes them to repel. And they will know that creating those particular structures at a certain quantization scale, when they put it in there, it will create a safe bubble I would argue that it's in the Vesica Pisces, okay, in that structure, that then is safe to move because the charge and inertia and mass is negated inside the overall spherical structure. And then you can move that structure in exactly the same way in any vector you like. And I look at this from the point of view of something that I saw when I was 7 years old. I saw it in the sky. I can see what they can do. They can instantaneously change direction. So I don't have the mental problem that people can't move these things around. And it's just like if you've got a laser pointer, and it's not a laser, but let's say you've got a laser pointer, I'm able to move that around and make the cat chase it around instantaneously. And the further the thing is away from me, the faster I can move it over a distance with a set of servos on my controller, right? So if I'm up in space and I'm at a few hundred kilometers up, I can move my servo just a fraction of a micron, and it's already moved 1,000 miles on Earth. You know what I mean? And once you've locked the center, the topological monopole structure with the phase conjugated scalar waves and the interferometry, and you just move those two vectors around, it's literally instantaneous. So teleportation, perceptually teleportation, and it's as fast as you can move those servos to control the controlling cross beams.
With teleportation, would you not need
no, it's not teleportation.
toroid?
It would appear to the people inside that it's teleportation, and effectively to anyone that's experiencing something and instantaneously appear, the field structure breaking down, and it just goes on the ground, right? It looks like it teleported there, but it's actually being moved in a relative time space. Like it's moved 2,000 miles in 1 millisecond. So from your point of view, you've literally gone through one frame in your eye, and it wasn't there, and now it is. Right, so for you, perceptually, it's teleported. For the people on the plane, it's teleported. No one felt any inertia, and it's gone from point A to point B. In all real senses, it's teleported. In practical sense.
So from somebody's point, I'm sorry. Well, from somebody's point of reference on the outside of your teleportation, would it not seem like you just disappeared?
Of course it would, yeah. You unappear from one point in space and you reappear from another point in space. The only point that you see the transition is where you're going through the formation of the super tor above, the fractal toroid above. And that's exactly what you see on the video. I had no choice but to engage with this topic. I had literally, it was a former director, Matthew Villatt of the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, said, "Have you seen this?" And I looked at it and go, "Oh, well, I know what that is." It was like, I was very matter of fact about it because it shows everything that's necessary. And all I had to do to describe it was to use five slides or something from this presentation that I'd already given before this became public through the good effort of Ashton.
Yeah, and I think that the thing about it that I've learned is that it's somewhat simple. I mean, yes, it's complex if you think about it, if you don't have any background for it, but when you just think about it in terms of breaking down the empty vacuum state of space-time, like our reality is some type of a projection, and I think the double slit experiment proves that straight up, because we know that there is some capability of non-locality, and now all we're trying to do is figure out, how do we cause it? And in this case, you can think of what's happening here is like riding a wave, right? The plane's riding this wave and it's doing so on another, if you want to think of it as dimension, so to speak, but it's able to do so where it can, from their perspective, move faster than the speed of light. And yeah, it would just then look like it's disappearing, right? And going to reappear somewhere else.
The other thing is that along those lines is the concept of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Because the size of an atom is relative to the charges that can express themselves in ordinary charge levels that we observe. So if you can imagine a neutron star, it's like a teaspoon of the neutron star, like may weigh as much as our sun, right? And all that's happened is the electrons have come from being outside of a so-called nucleus and inside a thing making all the protons into neutrons that weren't already neutrons, right? And so if you have something that changes the dielectric constant of the physical vacuum in the nucleus, then the electrons and everything can shrink down. You still have an atom, but it's in its own space-time. It's still within our universe reality, but inside that space-time, you have a bubble where electric charges are represented differently because you've changed epsilon zero. And so you can literally shrink that plane. Now, if you take the Earth and you put it into a black hole, and the Schwarzschild radius, it's 8.7 millimeters across. So how big is that plane going to be? Not very big.
The problem with that, though, is then, you got people on board this plane, right? And I'm just going to go ahead, since we're talking about this, I want to give...
You have to think about the people and the plane as information. And the information is represented in a stable state in space-time, which we perceive in our epsilon zero, our dielectric constant of the vacuum. Now, inside this bubble, you're changing that relationship. They're still the same atoms. They're still in the same exact orientation, but you've shrunk them. This is Alice down the rabbit hole, right? So this is literally going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is their frame of reference wouldn't even change from their point of view.
No, they would.
That's what I'm hearing too.
See themselves exactly the same. They'd be on their iPads or whatever it was back in 2014. They'd be talking to each other, going, "What's that smell of bromine? Oh God, whatever it is." They wouldn't experience. But what they would do is, once they're fully in that state, they might have a stop of time. Now, from their point of view, they don't ever perceive the stop of time. They just, at one point, they're over the Andaman Sea, and the next moment, they're wherever they ended up, whether that be in another planet far, far away, or somewhere else that you might like to mention, Chagos Islands.
Interesting.
And it would happen so quick for them. The brain wouldn't even be able to comprehend the speed.
You would not perceive time.
Yeah.
So this is basically just an Akko-Berry drive, right?
You go and look at the study of T.L. Carr. The T.L. Carr was, I think he knew the doorman of Tesla, and they ended up creating this supposed anti-gravity craft. And there was this guy who visited them called, what's his name? Otis T. Carr. But there was a guy who's got like fluffy hair, and he met him, and he put his hand into the aluminum. What? Ralph Ring, yes. Ring? So Ralph Ring said that they went in this device, and they said, look, we're going to go down range. And they went down range, and they told everyone to get some rocks and put them in their pocket. And they went back up range, and they had no concept that they'd actually traveled. The guy said, can you now look in your pockets? And there's the rocks that are not here. They're only available down range. And so they had no perception of time change. And it might have been that they got out of this bubble, and they were still in the sphere of influence of the non-radiating boundary. So their time was still stopped there. So they're like almost in a, they're almost like tripping. They have no long-term memory because they can't lay down the long-term memory, because in my view, long-term memory is dumped by the toroidal moments in the vortex and the anti-vortex in your brain that produces the toroidal moment. It dumps it into the basically the real cloud before they came up with this fake rubbish they call the cloud, which is the coherent condensate related neutrinos through the entire universe. So they have no ability to dump long-term memories. Okay. And so when they come back and they find rocks in the pocket that are not available in the local environment, they must have traveled downrange. And they even say that the device is controlled by consciousness, and that's you literally become part of this other conscious entity, which is the craft that you're controlling.
Like being in a dream state, essentially.
Yeah, it's like being in a dream, and you can't for damn remember what the dream was.
So why does the orb have this heat signature on it? Is it self-sufficient then at that point? If you think there's no mass inside, because to me when I look at it, I feel like there's got to be some mass inside this non-radiating barrier.
So if you go to my presentation, Jeremy Reese, there's a point where you've got like a single bar thermal extraction. Okay, so it's on the Shakparanov Mobius strip, a bit higher than that. In the presentation, it's higher. Higher. No, higher. It's much higher up in the presentation. It's like one of the early slides describing the principles. There, the shack pack. No. Down. It's there. Slide 11. There. No, up. 11. That. You've got the yin on the one side, and it's extracting energy in a sphere at a distance. The yin is less bright in the center of the phase singularity. Why? Because it's fusing matter. Okay. And if you get two deuterons and fuse them together, you get 25 million electron volts. The yang is destroying matter. It's always brighter because it's unraveling the energy. It's not the energy gained from a lower distortion of space-time that is what you get out of fusion. You're literally unraveling all of the energy, the trap light that's in those baryonic and electron matter. Okay. And it produces an intense flash of light, but it also projects out. So you get a luminous object at a distance. So this is one way that you could create these particular objects, but it's not really a very controlled way. You want to create them from a soliton. But what I'm showing you there is that these structures can actually thermally extract energy from a distance. Now, it might be that flash you see is actually the projected effect from this self-organization of those three tors into a super tor above, a fractal tor above. And the flash is actually slightly behind that of the dark area where it's thermally extracting energy.
And what is this burning? Is this like it looks like magnesium burning or something? What is going on here in the picture? What are we looking at, and what was done in this Shakparanov generator experiment here? Like how do it because it was this and what is the photography? Was it done with like a high-speed camera? You know, making sure like this isn't just exploding bits that like jumped a real long distance in a short.
So on the luminous object, you'll see that it has subfractal lobes on it. Can you see those? You can see in that where next to the word luminous, you actually have these hemisphere structures on the overall sphere, right? And they note this. And that is to do with the spherical organization because they form a crystal type lattice structure, which you can see in the patent by Lockheed Martin. Okay. But if you go to the next slide, slide 12, you can see the exact same Penrose staircase diagram, which is a demonstration of what the phase singularity is. And on the right, you see a Mobius strip, which has the same phase singularity. It depends which way you go round, whether it's a yin or a yang. And so what the Shakparanov research did is they created a pseudo monopole by first treating these single electrode, because it's a Mobius strip, with RF. So they treated the environment to excite the environment, and then they hit it with two contacts either side of the single wire, because it's a single wire because it goes twice very round. And the reason as it goes round, if you go to the slide above, you can see the NVIDIA Tesla simulation of down there, right? That is the copper strip. And what you're seeing in the blown up section there is a simulation, a computer simulation of the propagation of the charge separation of the positive charge and the negative charge on the copper as it's propagating around the structure. And what you're seeing there is positive space charge, vortex and anti-vortex, and negative space charge, vortex and anti-vortex. And that sets up the space-time charge space charge system that when you hit it, and it's in the process of doing it at that point, you hit it, it produces this phase singularity, and that produces the topological monopole. So what I'm saying is, I'm suggesting to you is happening when you see that black flash. That is thermal energy that is captured from the single bar thermal extraction, as described in the Lockheed Martin patent. Okay, it says one of the applications is single bar thermal extraction, and it's extracting that energy, and it's going to be behind the direction of travel of the new fractal Tor that's just been produced. Okay, and so that produces a shock wave of cold, and it's sucking the energy out of that environment, and that is part of the way that's allowing it to propel itself, right? So if you go in my presentation further up, Jeremy,
so you think it's cold because it's sucking the energy out of?
No, actually, go to slide 8. That's quite a good one. These structures. So that's your image there, Jeremy, of a green laser cutting through a smoke soliton. You can see that in these cases, it sucks things in from behind.
Yeah.
Right. You can see on the two solitons making a fractal soliton structure. It's sucking at that impact. What you're seeing in that right hand 2017 water nanobubbles is two solitons on top of each other. The white areas are where gas that's dissolved in the liquid becomes nanobubbles, and the light is reflecting off the interface between the water and the gas. Okay, how is it possible that you have that heart-shaped structure, or that kind of leaf-shaped structure, where everything has got bubbles? That's because you have matter going into two singularity points on the yin and the yang, right? And it's literally a flat structure. That it's not actually like a mushroom. That it's actually two solitons overlaid at the golden ratio on the sacred geometry structure. That produces a torsion a beam which has a lower pressure that fires out behind it, and it sucks also energy in, and that's what you're seeing in that little flash of stuff behind. So even though it's going forward down to the bottom left, and even though your one, Jeremy, is going to the top left, right, it actually is stretching and changing the space-time in front of it, meaning it has effectively a lower pressure in front. And behind, it's kind of sucking things in, which it's feeding itself. It's weird because it's feeding stuff from behind that's propelling it forward. It's really weird to think about it. But
so you think it's moving forward in that situation, but even though it looks like it's going backward because of that's where
no. I think the propagation of the cold wave is going backwards because you have an intense coldness. And so what we find is in our experiment, like in the lion experiment, the original lion experiment, the temperature was about 850 degrees. He turned it off and he attached a 20 watt, 20 watt light bulb, and it lit for 30 minutes, and immediately heard this crackling sound, and air was being sucked in to the tube. And when you look at the temperature, it went from 850 degrees to nearly minus 273 degrees centigrade in 2 seconds. And that's because these clusters, which we identified, and you can see the marks of them on slide, where is it? Slide 15. If you go down to slide 15, Jeremy, that is the accretion disk in the butterfly wings. And in the center, you've got a black hole. That is where the matter has collapsed. And you've got the torsion beam coming out down the bottom. Okay? And that is where the energy is sucked in and spun in behind it. In the one on the right, that's HHO gas from Hiroshima Masa on tungsten for about 2 or 3 seconds, and it produces that magnet. Both of those are magnetohydrodynamic structures, you'll see. And the one on the right, you can see where the sphere is. And when you go to the last slide, I love this slide. Go to the last slide, Jeremy, and make it full screen.
The last slide in the presentation?
Not the last slide, the third to last slide, 42. Of course, the answer's on 42. It would be. Right. Go full screen. Can you go and just play that? Because I want to show you playing the animation.
How do we do?
Play in the top middle, kind of to the left there, that one. Right. Oh, is it going to play it? Oh, you've got it in a different view mode. It's going to be showing on a different screen for you. Okay, stop sharing. Yeah, no, you have to quit out. Go to the X on the
I'll be right back. I'm going to get a drink, guys.
Yeah, no worries. I need to do another interview in a little while.
You'll have to do another presentation on this.
Okay, can you click on your image, the AlienScientist image on the bottom there? Can you click it and try and get it to play the video that's embedded? Click it. Up there. Go on the white area and click. Press play. Right. Now, that's your image. Oh, is it going to play it? Yes. Okay, that's the sacred... No, just let it play. It's got about a 3-second delay between. That's the sacred geometry on your slightly distorted structure. That is a golden ratio. That is literally the Tesla logo in exactly and correctly the right place on the 1914 patent. Now, look at this. Where we are ripping tungsten apart, that circle with the carbon film coming off, and this is also a topological monopole, that exact circle of what is synthesized strontium from the tungsten with the carbon film coming off, wait for it. It'll go round in a second. Wait for it. That is exactly where the secondary takeoff of Tesla's patent is. And now in 2 days before I gave that presentation, I thought that has to be significant. That is the point of destruction of matter or synthesis of matter or projection of energy. I looked at his 1914 patent. You could bring it up if you choose, but it says something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing here. If you move that secondary takeoff a few fractions of an inch down, it will create a ball of plasma, which has fantastic destruction capability, and it destroy the apparatus. I'm not a time traveler. I did not go back in time and tell Tesla to put that in his 1914 awarded patent for the Tesla Wardenclyffe Tower. And if you draw on the non-radiating boundary, it's above head height, and in fact, it's above the second floor windows in the Tesla's tower. So there would have been no interactions with humans with this weird area that would have caused problems for biological entities. And Tesla's logo is more accurate than the real Iconovasara from, which is Thor's hammer, Thor being the god of ball lightning and thunder and lightning, right? Like you literally could not make this up. All history supports this standard magnetohydrodynamic understanding. All of history, all of the classified patents from the Soviet Union, all of the classified patents and work from the US. It is what it is. And every time anyone comes to the conclusion that it's ball lightning, like this guy did in 1993, they changed the rules of the American Nuclear Society to prevent him from publishing. When Ken Shoulders realized it was ball lightning, a person from Los Alamos National Laboratory demanded that the curator, Jed Rothwell of LearnerCanada.org, remove his papers from the database. And I never heard of this person or Ken Shoulders until I started understanding this was ball lightning in 2017. Never heard of it.
Interesting. I wonder what I have Michael here, just joined. He's our material scientist at
Hi,
our
Michael.
lab.
How you doing?
We were trying to we haven't had any direct experience trying to replicate any of the Hutchison effect stuff or any of these EVO experiments or even cold fusion stuff in our lab just yet. But if we were to try to do that, like where would you suggest we start? I mean,
okay, so I would recommend.
I have a question as well. I missed. I'm sorry, I was working with a vacuum furnace, so I just got in here. What was this thing about a Lockheed Martin patent for environmental energy extraction?
It's called Systems and Methods for Generating Coherent Matter Wave. It uses without credit the method of generating electron solitons of Ken Shoulders, and then it employs the Aharonhof bomb effect that was used effectively by the person that informed on trying to understand Ken Shoulders' work, John Hutchison's work, and that was the work of Winston Bostic, who from 1948 worked on Project Sherwood, which was Los Alamos and Princeton University and one other location, with converting the hydrogen bomb into domestic fusion. And so they say one of the applications of the coherent matter wave, which can be produced at any temperature, even using fermions, using this technology and this approach, one of the applications is single bath thermal extraction, which means you have everything at the same temperature, and from that volume of exactly the same temperature, you can actually extract thermal photons, right, and bring them to a new location. And that is the zone that you see in the Shak-Paranoff work.
I lost the page with the patent on that, and I'm trying to bring it back up.
I've got a link within my presentation, so you can just click on that.
So if I'm understanding correctly, it's using the Aharonov-Bohm effect
the phase singularity is using the Aharonov-Bohm effect to get things in phase and appropriately apportion the energy distribution between them.
So how does this phase difference allow you to push the energy around exactly?
Okay, so what's a Saser?
What's that?
What's a Saser? It's a sound laser. It's what they use in these active denial effects, which actually produces these terrible things, which actually, because of the piezo nature of your tendons in your teeth.
That's a heat pump. That's not negentropic or anything.
Wait. What's a laser? A laser is the same photon energy, so it's got the same wavelength, and it's in phase, right? Okay. What a maser is a microwave photon in phase, okay, and same energy. What a coherent matter wave is, let's say we take the preferred element of, after many years of research, of Nikola Tesla for producing his etheric matter streams. He chose aluminium. Aluminium has one isotope, 27. So already you're onto a winner. Now, if you give that the same energy, i.e. every single aluminium atom is exactly the same energy, its de Broglie wavelength description means the wavelength is exactly the same for the matter wave. And then what you have to do to make a coherent matter wave is you need to get those same energy de Broglie wavelengths, descriptions of the matter, into phase. And the way you can only do that is the Aharonov-Bohm effect. And at the center of a fractal toroidal structure, you get it for free.
So what is the Aharonov-Bohm effect doing to get these?
It's allowing these things to get into phase without messing around with their energy level in a negative way. It's very well described in the Lockheed Martin.
It's not directly affecting the Hamiltonians of the particles. It's just shifting the phases. I see. Okay, that's interesting.
This is the pattern, and it's all well described in there. And from this pattern, I learned the one most important thing. You do not need to cool matter down to near absolute zero to create coherent matter. The reason they did that is because that is the easiest way. You have a substrate, and you take the cesium-133 atoms, or you take your sodium-23 atoms, or whatever, that single matter wave function, but they're all at different temperatures, so they cannot cohere. You then lower that down and lower that down to absolute zero, and they're on a substrate so that their energy levels are almost exactly the same, which means their wave function, de Broglie wave function description is almost exactly the same. And it's just like pendulums on a suspended support. If they're all out of phase, after a while, they always end in phase. Yeah. Okay. That's how you create your normal Bose-Einstein condensate that they did in 1995, 6 or 7 or whenever it was first made, after being predicted for so long by Bose and Einstein. The difference is with this is you can take fermionic matter, you can create bosons from that by creating, for instance, like a Cooper pair out of electrons, or dimers where your nuclei is not already fermionic nuclei, bosonic nuclei. And then once you do that, you can then get them all at the same temperature. And what they're doing here in this, they're using this 10 micron with many coupled microcavities to allow the bouncing around so they get at the same energy level. And then they use the magnetic field to act the Aharonov-Bohm effect. And that allows for these things that are at the exact same energy to become in phase. So you get coherent matter waves. And that comes out as a beam. And that actually has far more punch than any laser will ever have, right? So I think a lot of these weapons, the next generation weapons that they're putting on aircraft carriers and planes, they call them lasers, but they're not. They're matter wave.
How big do you think this device would have to be? Pretty small.
We produce matter wave in our Vega experiments, and it's caused by a little crack in the brass plate.
So tiny is the answer.
We produce it probably out of a structure where the core of the structure is maybe 40 microns across. Look at the scale of their device for creating a coherent matter wave. The actual length of the longest length of the body is 10 microns.
Do you think the number of cavities matters on that device right there?
What?
Do you think the number of cavities has to be specific, like we see here in this image?
Well, you can look at our actual SEMs, and the answer is already in the SEMs, because nature has already given the perfect environment for it to be generating these coherent matter waves. You can literally look at our SEMs and you can see the spacing. So what is it? It's in our particular device, I think a spin wave and an anti-spin wave is over 400. Is it over 400 microns? Or is it over 40 microns? Anyway, you can go and see in our SEMs. The answer's already there from nature, literally writing on a piece of brass what the answer is. Now, there could be quantizations above or quantizations below, but you don't have any. There's no necessity for maths. There's no necessity for other theories. It doesn't matter what's going on. Nature's giving you the answer because we see the coherent matter waves and you can see what produced them. That's it. The answer's already there physically.
So the coherent matter waves are not the same thing as EVOs, though, right?
Well, arguably, the EVO itself is a coherent structure, and if it's traveling, it's a soliton, which is a trapped wave, and it's coherent matter and traveling in a wave. So it can become a coherent matter wave. But actually, the coherent matter waves.
It's not like any of the standard atoms, though. Also, these are the mathematical description comes out of the Lenert equations for these, I believe.
You know what? I swore to my readers and my viewers I would never use an equation. I broke that when the Russians sent me the Zverblis paper for having thrown in the towel, right? I said, look, I need to understand this without a single equation so every person on Earth can understand this implicitly. And then I realized it's in your face. So it's like, it's literally the design of your face. The answer is always in the mirror.
Well, I mean, this is a somewhat more technical.
People can do the maths later. You can ascribe all kinds of mathematical equations that fit this, and there might be 20 different mathematical equations that give you the answer. But you need to look.
You were referring to space charge, though, so I figured.
Yes, I am. Yes, and that is important.
So about the geometry in this, can this be related to any fundamental constants or anything like that in nature?
Jeremy, before we do that, I'd like to get this nailed down here. So, the people who mainly looked at space charge were, I believe, Evans, Greenyer, and Lenert, and they had a lot of interesting concepts. I don't know if they're all correct, but I mean, if you generate space charges, those are the guys to look at, I imagine. So the coherent matter waves are one thing. The EVOs are
can also be coherent matter waves, but actually, what you get. If you look, go to slide 23. Okay, so you get a coherent matter wave that can come out of a collapsing structure like a reentrant jet from a normal cavitation bowl. As it collapses, it forces the coherent matter wave through the center, and it comes out as normally two structures, right? But it depends, because you can have coherent matter waves that come out of the substructures. So typically it's almost always two. So look on the left, that's two. So when the overall matter structure collapses and you actually get a flash, you get two orbiting around each other. Okay. Sometimes you can have three, sometimes you can have four, but the likelihood of it being more it comes down to how stable it was on the resonant phenomena that generated the structure. Okay. So what it kind of does, it can package the information into a certain quanta, and it can keep loading information in there, and energy in there, and you get more substructures of substructures forming up until you get 48, and it has to either blow up or it has to become the next fractal up. And so it scales and grows like that. But depending on the substructures, depends on, like, if you go and look at the videos on the coherent matter wave beams that we have, we sometimes have, weirdly, just a tube, which I would see is just a traveling Evo. There's only one or two examples of that. Most of the examples are two that orbit around their center of mass, right? And often they have a white zone, and then they have something that is orbiting. It is orbiting around, but you only see it when it's coming into the ions or electrons in the plasma chamber. And what I mean by that is one is a positive structure and one is a negative structure, or they are spin or alternate spin structures. And when one interacts directly to produce the glowing plasma and the other one doesn't, but it pushes a bow wave in front of it. So you only see it when it's coming towards the camera, but not when it's going away. It's a little bit weird. So you can see that on our videos. Okay. We've seen some collapse wave functions of these things, and we end up with like a little bullet as it dumping the matter that was entrained in it, and you have these orbiting things going around it. And sometimes you see it actually interacting with the material and making these multiple spiral changes in the spin of the atoms of the material, which allows you to see them when you put polarized light on a microscope. You don't see anything, and you put polarized light, and you suddenly these tracks appear. Because it's affected the spin of the nuclei in the matter. It's just reorganized their spin, not the actual matter. It's a bit weird, but it's because of the intense localized magnetic field, and it just travels through and affects the matter as it travels through. Yeah.
Interesting. So, again, how does this relate to taking thermal energy from the environment? So how do you use only phase to create a temperature difference in an otherwise initially thermalized?
So what is thermal energy? Well, it's phonons vibration in matter, typically at terahertz frequency if it's in IR range. Now, you've obviously got different frequencies which are not thermal. In fact, most of vibrations in the universe are not in the thermal IR range, right? So if you can have a system that can either change basically it appears to have, if you go back to the model, the 3D model. Okay. Can you see? Okay, so can you see the little spot that's on the Sothic ratio cone that comes out the bottom? So you've got the 2 order on the left. Okay, that's the spot there. That is the spot where it seems to do freaking magic, and that is where you get on the overall structure, you get like the focus of the beams that interact with dark matter, and the dark matter has 2 things it can interact with: gravity and electrons. And electrons are the means by which any thermal energy can be moved around, if you know what I mean. Like you can only have vibration when one particle is moving here and its charge is repelling this, and like then it bounces back. So like it's because of the electrons that you have transfer of energy, kinetic energy, between anything in any frequency, okay, within ordinary matter. And so my understanding is that little spot there is able to extract not so much the actual thermal energy from the device, it extracts the chi. And the chi is the structure that keeps the balance between the flux of the chi that goes through the atom and keeps the electrons where they ordinarily are, and stops them from being overexcited. And you can go and see this on Where is the Atom Battery? I think it's a paper by a Dubna research scientist called Alexander Shishkin, who actually works with, unfortunately, Dubovik, who's nearly completely lost his mind through dementia. But anyway, they say that the atom keeps its electrons in particular because of this dark matter fractal toroidal structure that's in there ordinarily. And this is the etheric matter that was released by Tesla in the 1800s and beyond, when he did the unidirectional discharges into targets. And this is what the Soviets call and the Russians call the hidden energy within matter. And so what you're not when Tesla says in 1935, the energy comes from a surprising source, I don't know how much he knew about this, but he does call the invisible boundary, which is impenetrable, that this creates, an invisible Chinese wall. That's literally what he says. And nothing about what he said is not deliberate. So if you go back to my third to last slide, Jeremy. Okay. Can you see the photo with Tesla? That's the 1935 photo from his Weapon to End All Wars. And look at the sacred geometry. It exactly has the Vesica Pisces in exactly the correct place. Now, in our wormhole model on the right, if you click on that one, Jeremy, and play it. No, on the right, the brassy colored one. The brassy colored one. Yeah. You see the sacred geometry overlaid on that. One, you can see that the white ring with the black ring slightly outside of that is the only area that this magnetohydrodynamic structure affects. It has a wormhole that the matter goes into. There is literally no hole in the center of that dome. A load of material has been captured into this wormhole, and it goes through to the other side of the Vesica Pisces and gets punched through, and it literally punches a hole through, and it leaves the material. And if you go and play on the iron, which is the substrate below that brass plate at an angle, Jeremy, below that where it says Greenyer, Vega pyramid. No, to the right, that one. Look at the sacred geometry, how it's deposited the brass exactly where the sacred geometry is. Exactly. Right? Now look at his Vesica Pisces flower of life pot that he has over his right shoulder, Tesla, from his 1935 Weapon to End All Wars press photo. The area that is affected only is where he's cut off the top of the flower pot. Right? He has the vortex and the anti-vortex correctly, one behind the other, as I showed you in the white banana bubbles in the ultrasonic tank of Suhas Ralkar earlier on in the presentation. And it's always slightly offset, one above the other. He precisely showed in that picture that he precisely knows how nature works. And his own Wardenclyffe Tower is based on that. His anti-gravity device is based on that. His Weapon to End All Wars is based on that. And he specifically says it in the press text, this creates an invisible Chinese wall. It extracts chi, the hidden energy within matter, and it creates an impenetrable boundary out of this.
Well, I saw a slide about cold electricity as well. I think I missed that.
Go for that. Yeah, it's all very trivial. Once you understand, it's all very trivial. And so this guy here, Matsumoto, in 1995, thought he discovered a new form of electric current. And he said it was ball lightning, it travels along the wire, and when it blows up, it leaves a carbon deposit. And he says, but there's no resistance. So if you go down to cold electricity, a bit further down. There. So, no, up, that's one. So essentially, through the center of the fractal toroidal structure, firstly, Ken Scholder said you can have trillions and trillions of electrons in there, right? We know that they end up in coherent matter, and we know they end up superconducting because that's how the structure keeps itself self-organized and together without the Pauli exclusion principle making it blow apart, right? But through the center, it has this, if it's arranged so that it has a kind of an electric field, it's not necessarily electric field, but it can be guided along the wire. Now, when Tom Bearden sent a team over to 1992 to Moscow to visit people on the periphery of the Soviet energetics research work, they showed him two technologies: cold deformation of metals, where they use some kind of electromagnetic system to convert metal into a jelly, which they could push in a mold, and then they grounded it, and they were able to cold mold metal. The other one was many kilowatts over very fine wires. And I wanted to put it into this presentation, but I couldn't find it in my archives. There's an early 2000s presentation where there was a TV news program in Russia where they showed this team using a Tesla coil, creating these structures, and they had an 8 micron thin copper bare wire dangling in the air, like 8 microns, and they were able to light 25 kilowatts of tungsten light bulbs from that. Okay, and that's because the wire just acts as a guide for the charge cluster, and the charge cluster, as it goes through the toroid of toroids, which is the actual filament of a tungsten filament light bulb, the magnetic field induced causes them to break up from their coherent state, and that interacts as normal electrons lighting the light bulb. It's quite trivial, actually, when you understand it. And this is Maury B. King's diagram. And what Maury B. King has inadvertently drawn there without realizing it is a fractal toroidal structure carrying the current.
I wish it was easy for me to
understand. These are effectively Tesla's DC pulses, I guess. So you have like a AC signal with a DC offset.
These are Tesla's electrical particles of matter from his 1932 beam weapon.
Okay.
So
I mean,
have
if you look at Eric Dollar's work, there's a lot of stuff about this, and it just generally uses DC pulses. So they'll have a rise and a fall, but
so a DC pulse is a
volts.
unidirectional pulse. That is exactly what Tesla used. Why? Because if you have an AC pulse, you don't have all the flow going in the one direction.
Exactly.
And that's why you have, say, a magnetically quenched air gap, those kind of devices, so that you only get the pulses going in one direction.
So I have a question for you then.
That's actually so key to like my own electrolysis experiments, and that I have to start doing them side by side, AC versus DC, just to show the difference of how much it really does affect.
So my question, Bob, is, are you saying that the excess energy? Okay, so for example, the system that I'm using, I've now gotten to a point where I'm putting in 27 volts, 1.3 amps, and I'm heating a 900 watt electric element, 110 volts, for at 185 degrees Fahrenheit in 5 minutes for 35 watts.
I could give you some potential explanations. The first one is you are going to get a. So go on.
One more part to that before you explain that. The coil that runs the system gets colder when it's heating up the element.
Of course, it probably would do, because the coil, if you've got it configured correctly, it will do single bar thermal extraction. Okay, on sub levels. Okay, if you've got the curl on the electrodynamics correctly done.
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I believe I do anyway.
Okay, so then if you get a flux of relic neutrinos through the center and it goes through the phase singularity, and if they are unwrapped and then rewrapped somehow, I don't know what the nature of your coil is, then in theory you can take that 0.25 of an EV that's been something like that, that's been established by Parkhomov, and you can unwrap that into basically a photon that has that energy, and then you can rewrap that into, let's say, an electron. And we know that an electron, effectively, if you take a positron and electron and you collide them, they unravel. One unravels the other, and you get two photons of 511 keV coming out in opposite 180 degrees out. And this is the basis of positron emission tomography. So we know that the electron and the positron are essentially photons wrapped in opposite spin directions, right? And so this is the same of a neutrino and an antineutrino, okay? But there's charged leptons and uncharged leptons, and the question is, how do you get the difference between the two? But other way, it doesn't matter. You've got energy. You convert the energy into a photon, and you rewrap packets of those energy, and they come out as electrons. So that's one way that you can do that. Now, the other way is if you have baryonic matter going through the center of your coil, and that could just be environmental baryons, like that are in air or nitrogen or whatever. If the diality angle, according to David Freiberger, is exceeded at the center of the structure, or at the center of any of the fractal toroidal structures, this can unwrap the matter, and you get 930 something million electron volts of energy released. And does that collapse down into other electrons? You could have a scenario where you're converting a good proportion. I would be concerned in those environments, if you're genuinely doing that, that maybe there's some form of radiation coming off, that I would like to understand more about that. Because
I have multiple meters. I don't have a Geiger counter yet, but I have a tri-field meter, and I have a sound meter, quite a few different things put into play.
Okay, I would suggest getting some silver foil and putting it over your various detectors to try and excite any potential clusters that are coming off, and putting them into the white mode so that it can be detected. Either that or some potassium containing mica. And some Geiger counters, pancake ones, have a potassium containing mica window. And, actually Ed Storms detected these things. But anyway, the point is that I would suggest doing that. There's a guy called Russ George, and he found from cavitation experiments that he saw no radiation, and then he put different metals in front of his Geiger counter, and he suddenly started seeing radiation counts. But he worried, and he didn't know what they were, and he found that silver was the thing that produced the most peak of radiation. And then he went to Edward Teller and said, what's going on here? And Edward Teller said, well, these are what we call machinigons, which is some Jewish or Yiddish name for something that we don't really know what it is, but it exists.
That brings me to another point. After doing multiple tests with my coil system with a neodymium magnet, the nickel on the outside has been eaten off, and I took a look at it.
Well, the nickel on those neodymium magnets, depending on the humidity, I mean, the reason the nickel's on there is because the ceramic regularly falls apart in moist air. And
I would love to send it to you.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I looked at it through a microscope. It has some very interesting features, we'll just say.
Okay, well, let's have a look at it. Yeah. I mean,
I'll send you an email, and we'll see if we can hook that up. I definitely want to put that in your hands.
Thank you.
So I have another question, and maybe Michael can answer this too, if you're there, Michael. You mentioned something to me the other day about a way to stabilize, super heavy elements using externally applied gamma fields, and that maybe just maybe. I mean, Bob Lazar describes a stable isotope of this element 115 that he had in a triangle that he could carry around with him. So it wasn't something that he had to keep in this machine that kept it stable. But you said that there might be ways to stabilize these super heavy elements and keep them stable by injecting gamma rays into them.
That's incorrect. It wasn't in a machine that kept it stable. It was stable. When you hit certain isotopes, like tantalum 180, for example, with gamma rays, they absorb those gamma rays, and the right frequency of gamma rays. They absorb the gamma rays, and due to the high nuclear spin, it's like a top. It actually prolongs decay. Yeah, look at that. Tantalum 180M is stable, even though it's technically metastable. And then tantalum 180 itself decays in 8 hours. So you synthesize tantalum 180, you hit it with gamma rays, and you can stabilize it. The same thing with super heavy elements. There's this island of stability, and none of the standard isotopes are stable, but some of the nuclear isomers are, and you generate these nuclear isomers by making these the radioactive isotopes and then hitting them with gamma rays. And then they're stable. You don't have to stabilize them with an external machine. I don't know if that's part of Bob Lazar's story or something. I haven't been paying attention to that at all. But these are also as far as I know, unrelated to EVOs.
I think you're right. It's not related to EVOs. What you have with an isomer being unstable, and this is the principle of indium activation by neutrons to detect the production of neutrons. An isomer is where you have the same baryonic matter, but it's arranged in different arrangements. So, and sometimes it's called an excited state, but actually the reality is it's just a reorganization of where the position of the nuclei are in the.
So it's a reorganization of the nuclear shell model. It's a reorganization of the nucleons, and
that's what I'm saying.
That does take energy, just like reorganization of the electrons. So if you have some, imagine it's like a phosphor, So you have visible light, and you shine some light on this thing. Then you take it out of the light, and it glows for a couple hours afterwards. It's like a phosphor.
Yeah, but that's one that's decays because you've given it energy. What you're describing is a system where you've reorganized the nucleons to a point where they're actually more stable than they were in the unexcited state.
Right, which can happen due to the high nuclear.
And the description is normally you call it an excited state, but what you're actually doing is you're moving it into a new arrangement where it's less likely to fall apart.
Well, no, it has real additional energy in there.
No, I'm not saying it's not got really additional energy. It's like
it's the same. So I mean, you can make any radioisotope stable by removing or adding the right components. But yeah, it's an excited state, but it is more stable than the unexcited state, which is
that's exactly what I'm saying. So how would I describe this is you've got like a nucleon that's teetering on the edge of a step, right? And you're giving it extra energy. You're moving it forward in the overall vector up the energy ladder so that you're moving it further onto the stable platform so that it doesn't matter how much vibration you get, it's not going to actually fall off that step and become de-excited. So that's kind of like how I would visually describe it.
Yeah. I wanted to mention one thing. I got to go work on some stuff here in a minute, but I just wanted to mention something interesting about these EVOs that I just realized. I'm sure other people have realized this before as well. So EVOs, they're sort of quantized, but you can generate them at whatever size you want with various amounts of energy. So there's a continuum to them of a sort. And what's interesting is when we developed the model of the neutrino, we saw that beta decay had a black body spectrum to it. When we would have expected that beta decay had specific energies that the electron would have during beta decay, quantized states. But because there's a continuum, that means that the electron is interacting with something else. So it's interesting to think about maybe the neutrino can be explained by something more like these EVOs. So
I recommend you read Parkhomov's Space Earth Human. He originally did the psychic spy program for the Soviet Union, and that's chapter 4 in the book. And he learnt the technology to learn about what was called N radiation. And there was a guy called Illy. Oh God, damn it! I had a conversation with him the other day about it. He proposed because normally when you have neutrino coming out of a reaction, they only have they don't preserve parity. And people kind of overlook this problem in nuclear physics. Anyway, he solved this, I think, in 1996 in a paper. Sorry?
Yeah, you said Ilya. So is that?
Hold on, I can actually go to my email with Parkhomov and find out the precise name. And then it's not it's published in Russian. I've done a Russian translation, but I'm going to do a proper translation in the coming weeks on my blog. But give me a second.
And also in Russia, they were able. So you mentioned they were able to gellify metal. So they must have figured out Hutchinson effect.
Oh yes.
Fascinating.
And it's not the same. Like Ralph Ring observed the jellification of aluminium, and aluminium is the easiest thing to do it with. Hold on, let me.
So is that like a coherent matter effect then?
Yes.
Got you.
Well, it's actually the way I look at it, the coherent matter is causing a flux of relic neutrinos, and the relic neutrinos interact with the weak force, but they affect the way electrons can form bonds. It's all in my presentation from ICCF 25, and so they affect it in all levels of ability of matter to use electric fields to form stable structures. So, okay, so let me find the name of the guy. Is Dmitrievsky IM, and it was Possibility of Maintaining Parity in Weak Interactions, Consciousness and Physical Reality from 1996. So he used that work to build these telescopes, and over 20 years he did this research which collected some and focused some radiation onto cobalt-60 and strontium-90, yttrium-90 samples, which are far better than tritium, particularly cobalt-60, because it's got like 3.6 year half-life, whereas tritium's like 10 or 11 years. And obviously it's a solid, so the target is much more dense in terms of the beta isotope. And of course, because he has this relationship with the nuclear proatom, he could get these samples. And he showed that he was focusing some type of what he originally called N radiation onto the samples and forcing the beta decay. And he knew it was inverse beta decay, either some neutrino structure coming in, because he shielded for all of the other energies from the spread spectrum of energies that you would normally get out of natural beta decay, and screened for only the maximum energy. And it was only the maximum energy that is likely to come from inverse beta decay. So he showed And now he's shown that you can technologically produce these things. So yeah,
cool. So you can induce the beta decay then. That's good.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, that'll be extremely useful for getting rid of radioactive waste.
Yes, and this is one proposal that I gave on December the 31st, 2021, to 9 Sigma, the evaluating agency of Fukushima's cleanup of their now 1.45 million tons of tritiated laced water, because we were going to burn onto calcium carbonate using the limelight effect from the 1820s or 1830s to produce this plasma glow that then produces the magnetohydrodynamic structures from the HHO of a Mars gas. And this was going to take calcium 40 and make potassium 39 and helium from the tritium. Okay. And it's the most likely outcome with the process. And so we proposed this, but they don't want a solution. And in fact, they changed the rules so that we couldn't provide a solution to them. And because they either want to concentrate the tritium, or they want to dump it in sea.
I mean, in Japan, they're very much sticklers for standard science, so they probably didn't believe it.
Well, the good thing is that because of the complaints of China and because of the complaints of South Korea, 9 Sigma have been removed from the evaluation agency, and it's now been replaced by Mitsubishi Industrial. And the guy that heads the Lena research at Mitsubishi Industrial, I know very well. I've got a good relationship with him, and he was my compere in my ICCF 25 presentation that you see coming up and saying, right, you've got 1 minute, you've got 2 minutes, whatever. That's that guy, Professor Iwamura. And he's actually met Roy Shinamaza in the past. So we're going to reapply because now, we've got international pressure. We would like the problem is that if we find a practical solution for dealing with tritium from nuclear reactors, the International Energy Authority will have to roll it out across the world because there'll be no excuse. They can't say we can't get rid of it, so we have to dilute it and dump it into everyone's waterways and seas because they will have a real solution to it, right? And also, the problem also for them is that it shows that you can do low-energy nuclear reactions. And it also shows that Yul Browne was right in 1992 when he showed in almost instantaneous remediation of beta isotopes and even alpha isotopes in the flash that gets created from the coherent matter that's produced by HHO. And so they've got whole kinds of questions to answer if they allow this technology to go forward. So right now, we've actually got people potentially in Germany that will allow us to do it, and we'll demonstrate it. We're just going to have to, we might have to just go to the Chinese and South Koreans and say, look, they won't allow us to do this, but this is what it can do. And it can fix the problem. What are we going to do about it? Yeah, it's really exciting. What?
Well, I hope it works for you guys.
Well, you can only try. I think that there's more effort gone in over the last 130 years to obfuscating the simplicity of this science than it takes to learn how simple it is. It's ridiculously easy. And almost all of the technologies are HHO. And it's because hydrogen has been identified by the Russians as 2,000 to 4,000 times easier to create the etheric matter streams, this hidden matter, energy within matter, than any element beyond lithium.
Hydrogen, you say?
Yes, water is the perfect fuel to initiate this process. It just is. Sorry.
That just happens to be what these bubbles are that a bagel coil is making right there.
This is our end of the world device right here. We're getting there slowly but surely.
Right, just a little salt water and a little electricity and copper, and you can make as much hydrogen as you need.
So, let's see.
I want to ask Michael a question, real quick. I don't want to change the subject too much, but hi, Michael. I'm glad to be able to talk to you the first time face to face. Nice to meet you, sir.
Hi,
what can we do with those heavy metals that you're talking about? I've heard about element 115 from the Bob Lazar thing, but can that actually drive an engine? And if so, how does that work scientifically?
First,
how do you
need to have some of it in your hands.
But we're working on it.
Well, tell me hypothetically how you think it could theoretically work. I don't need to know the exact proof. I'm just curious to try to understand the science.
Well, Lazar mentioned gravity A and B waves. There are some papers from the 50s about that, I think. These days, there's a better understanding of it in the proper circles, I assume. I'm operating completely in the open source, non-classified side of things for the time being. So, I can speculate. My speculations tend to be pretty good, but let's see. So, I mean, if you've got a very high nuclear spin, honestly, so one of the interesting things, we were working with bismuth, which is lower down than element 115, for example.
Yeah.
Bismuth exhibits a highly nonlinear Zeeman effect, especially when you distribute it into nanoparticles, but in general, it has a nonlinear Zeeman effect. And that may be useful for gravitational wave detection. And if you can detect something, you're interacting with it. So if you have element 115, I imagine that same effect would be amplified.
Element 115 was synthesized at Dubno, where both Shishkin and Dubovit work. And it obviously wasn't that stable.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that where they brought it up, and that it was like only for like milliseconds that it was able to
that's what I'm
exist
saying. I recommend that they try it again with a strong flux.
Yeah, I understand. You're saying hit it with gamma rays at the same time. So you probably need to use Mossbauer effect and create a gamma ray laser from using a nuclear. You literally need a nuclear explosion to create a gamma ray laser.
You can have an electron beam that hits beryllium.
Yeah, you can get the right energies. Yeah.
You get an electron beam that hits a beryllium target, same as in an X-ray machine. You just increase
they use that
electron voltage.
But Bogdanovich uses that to produce the monopoles at Moscow Nuclear Physics Institute. They use the cyclotron beamline and they fire it into a conversion target to produce the gamma beam.
Interesting. And they're producing neutrinos or something instead?
No, well, so they pass it through a magnet, but what they see is either side of the magnet, they get these mushrooms, which are the signature of these topological monopoles, these clusters, on either side of the X-ray.
When you have a gamma ray, your conversion between magnetism and this other particle is much more efficient than at lower
You actually produce these structures, or they argue potentially they're being knocked off the face of the magnets. They're already aggregated. There's north on the south and south on the north, and the gamma rays actually knock these off.
Interesting.
So
all
the Mossbauer effect. Sorry, Michael, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So let's see. I'm gonna. Well, I'll ask. So regarding the creating a heat difference in a thermal bath with phase. Perhaps if you could send Jeremy some articles about that later, I'll read up on it. As for teleportation, my big question is, how do you define? So say you're creating some coherent matter or something. Actually, I guess I missed the part about teleportation. So if you
very simply, there's a couple of ways that I envisage it is done. Now we've seen things move from inside a reactor to the outside of the reactor, like through several different materials, and then they're coming through the fused quartz, and actually half of the sphere appears inside the fused quartz, replacing the fused quartz in time, and another half, and then it dumps two more magnetic spheres that are linked on the pole of the original one that's half in the fused quartz. Like it kind of. It's a bit like that thing from Terminator where the Terminator appears and it's literally a spherical section that's cut out of the truck and stuff. It's literally exactly like that. It replaces the thing in space-time inside the bubble when it reemerges. So, and this is what John Hutchison. Now, these structures Ken Shoulders described. They can enmesh an object. And then the whole object is then weightless and massless. And then that can move into something else and reappear. And I imagine that this is how you get, for instance, like a piece of wood inside a block of aluminium, which is not something you can easily cast. I actually have half of the sample of the steel knife that's inside the aluminium block, which is a very famous Hutchison sample, and it's under analysis at the moment. And I imagine, again, that the clusters, their magnetic nature covered the iron and it went inside. So you get these kind of reports from the Philadelphia experiment where people were half in and half out of pieces of metal on the the overall thing. So that is teleportation and ending up in the wrong place. There's this guy that I think he's actually from Australia, this neck of the woods, and they find these crabs that are suspended in sand and then inside a sealed bubble well under the ground. and they can't understand how these fossilized crabs are in this sand and then the bubble on the outside. But if you can imagine that it was one of these structures that happened to grab the crab on the sand or whatever, and then it teleported under the ground effectively, and you ended up somewhere. This is my worry with Ashton, is like, if they didn't have proper control of that plane, they might have teleported to the inside of the Earth. And it's like, well, you're never going to find that, are you?
That's why I kept asking you about it, because it's like, the biggest thing I'm worried about is not just producing this effect, but like, how do you control where you go, right?
I think it's relatively easy to control, as I've described. So in terms of the teleportation, it's actually transportation, but it can be so quick that it's in the blink of an eye. So perceptually, from the viewer that sees it disappear, and for the viewer that sees it appear, and for the people on the craft, all of them have no perception of time from disappearance to appearance to I've transported myself. So effectively it's teleportation, but it's not like the teleportation that you might imagine from Star Trek, where it's taking quantum mechanical version of you, copying you, transporting that information to another location and deleting the previous one. And that's actually one method that Ken Shoulders describes for teleportation using EVOs. He says you can possibly clone things where the EVO will actually take a quantum mechanical copy of the object you want to replicate. And this would be your Star Trek replicator. You have a quantum mechanical description of a beef roast with gravy, right? And you dial that up on your machine, and it just creates out of raw energy everything at the right temperature in the right place. And every time you produce a version of that, you get another literally copy with the gravy dripping off the potato in exactly the same place when the wave function collapses. So there are these kind of concepts that you can come out of this, but I like to go with what I can see and what we've been able to demonstrate and how these interact. I can't really talk about things that it may do, which people have said in the past it should be able to do logically when you understand it. I need to work with what I can see and repeat scientifically. And we can see these things moving, self-organizing, producing these various quantization levels, which tend to be on these very particular scales. And Ken Shoulders was right, and the 1992 papers that and so on that I was made aware of recently, they show the same structure. So hot tub time machine. Well, I'm already excited.
So Bob, your hypothesis then is that these unidentified objects surrounded this plane and effectively enveloped it in an EVO.
Okay, you did miss that part of the description.
Yes.
It created a fractal torus at a level above. So the individual fractal tori rotated just before the point of the disappearance of the plane. They link their gravitational waves between the three of them. You need three to produce a plane, so that you know the normal perpendicular to the plane, right? And the normal needs to go through the azimuth between the three orbs through the length of the plane, right? And then when those link together, they produce a gravitational beam through the center, literally as is exactly described by John Archibald Wheeler in my ICCF 25 presentation, who invented the term wormhole and black hole, right? And as they link their gravitational waves, they produce a new gravitational wave orthogonally through the center of the plane. That causes them to pinch in, which increases the gravitational vector, which causes them to pinch in even more until they get to their stable fractal self-organization cluster level above, which you can see in our experiments. If you go to our experiments, you can see that when you have three structures, they have a specific scale, right? And they're not getting smaller, they're not getting bigger, but they make the thing in the middle disappear.
So you're additionally saying that these EVOs are producing a gravitational wave, or is this some gravitational?
Yes, I'm absolutely saying that. Yes, I'm absolutely saying that. Yeah.
Quick question then real quick, if I can just jump in, because we see these orbs, right? Let's just assume these videos are real for a second. The second half of them, I think you just described, is that they form a ring formation, and then I don't know if they're getting into phase, sync, whatever's happening there, but what are they doing before that? It looks like they're scanning the plane. Do you think they're trying to determine how big of protective shell that has to go on the plane? What are they doing there?
I think what it's doing, you've got the operational vehicle that's tracking the plane, and it needs to know where the front of the plane is and the back of the plane and the wings. And from that, it can actually work out what the orientation of the plane is. And simultaneously, you have the phase conjugated scalar waves that are interacting with the interferometry to position each of those, and to position each of those exactly in the plane that is perpendicular to the azimuth through the center, so that it's in the correct location for the vector of the visa-Capaces bubble that's going to capture that. And so they need to move around. They're like
they're
trying to keep, and they mustn't join their beams until the right moment.
Yeah.
And
so they're mapping it to figure out that it can be in the safe zone, right, for when they create the bubble. Or
yeah, they need to be exactly the right length down the plane to capture the. It might be that when that thing collapses, it's only the core of the plane, and you might lose the tail fin, and you might lose the wings. You literally only capture the passengers, and what ends up at the end destination on Alpha Centauri or wherever, it goes boom, and it leaves all the passenger cabin and the.
I prefer Zeta Reticuli, but fine, we'll go with Alpha Centauri for you. Just kidding.
Yeah,
and I get what you're saying though.
And basically, as it's creating the bubble, it might be slicing up and fragmenting the rest of the plane. You only want to capture the passenger part.
Now I'm worried about the tail, because we can see the tail sticking out from the singularity in the first frame. So now you've got me worried that maybe, well, I mean, on the plus side, maybe they just transported the people and just the hull of the plane directly to a specific location that's on the ground.
What I need to do is I need to look at those spheres and work out at the likely minimum distance where the visa-Capaces is, and map that over a standard. I was actually on one of these exact planes flying here, literally. I took pictures out the window to look at the flaperons and stuff.
Careful, you got to fly one of those planes back. We don't want to.
I have, and I should be going to the airport shortly, so I need to put an end to this quickly, but not in a bad way, in a good way.
May the orbs be with you or not with you on your flight. I don't know which one we want to wish you, but the angels keep your flight safe, Bob.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, that green bit you see is the spin inversion above the topological monopole, and you can go and look at the Aalto University. In fact, it's in my presentation, actually. I think it's in my presentation. ICCF 25. No, it's not. If it's not there, it's in quite a few other presentations. Yeah. So I think that, like, there's a reasonable likelihood that the flesh and blood ended up somewhere useful, right?
Yeah, we could have lived.
Whether that flesh and blood was still breathing when it arrived, because it wasn't breathing before, I don't know.
Because then the conspiracy goes on that they actually used the MH370 as the the 17 MH that got shot down over Ukraine as that supposed false flag. And there was reports at the time that lots of the bodies were smelling like rotten flesh and decomposed already, that the authorities had picked up of the remains of the people that were riding this MH17.
Yeah, I haven't heard this story. This is new to me.
And Jim Stone at the time, I watched this investigator. Who knows? But like, I don't. If you say like it went wrong and like the bodies came out as mesh and they're like, how do we destroy the evidence? It could have been, and that the conspiracy goes deeper. Jim Stone did a bunch of investigating at the time that seemed to show matching all of the MH370 flight or serial numbers onto images that were taken of the M17 plane or something, but I don't know. That's just a far.
Well, I'll give you another conspiracy here, right? This is a good one, and maybe I'll close out with this. In the 4th century, Anno Domini, there is a Coptic Christian stele, and it's in the Coptic Christian Museum in Cairo. And it is a perfect scientific document of how this wheel within a wheel works, right? It's old gravestone, okay? And it combines what Jesus decoded and the ancient Egyptian knowledge to show precisely how this technology works. It has the alpha and omega on there. It has the 2 vortex substructures, slightly one above the other. Absolutely perfect. And scarily enough, the 1775 design of the front door of number 10 is almost exact copy of this 4th century representation of this technology, right? the door of number 10 Downing Street. Now, number 10 Downing Street is not number 10. It's number 1, O, and the O is at 37 degrees. Now, why? Well, they say it's from the some old Roman calendar. They have no idea why they didn't use a 0 and they have an O at 37 degrees. You can go and look at this up on Wikipedia. Now, I need to get my facts straight here, so I'm going to just go and look at a reference document I have here. Basically, 37 degrees. Where is it? Oh, now I'm not going to be able to get this, am I? 37. Basically, I think according to the Akkadian culture, I think it's the Akkadian culture. I don't want to get this wrong because basically 37 is an incredibly special number. You can go and look at this up. There's quite a few reasons for this, but it's meant to be like it translates 37 degrees O. It translates to the one true power, or the the word of the living Christ, the one word of living Christ. And the 37 is the power known to the ancient Semitic knowledge. It's the most powerful thing about 37 degrees. I want to get the exact phrases that it's attributed to. And so when you have 37-0, for me, that's literally, it's a joke to me. When I saw that and I thought MH370, well, they would actually literally call the plane that they wanted to do the test on 370. That was the name you would give it. So there's a conspiracy theory for. I'm going to try and find this 37 degrees. You can look up 37 degrees, the importance of 37 degrees.
Does that deal with like Hoagland's what does he call it? Some sort of higher dimensional geometric physics, torsion physics.
I don't know, but it's something to do with this ancient knowledge.
I suspect that is the number. Sorry.
You suspect what?
That is the number that Hoagland used. I think it was like 37 and maybe 18 or something. I'm going to have
There's
to.
There's all kinds of mathematical relationships that 37 is unique for as well. And it might be because it is this unique number that it damn, I wish I could find it now.
I'm just curious why it's special. I mean, I've heard of like Brewster's angle and some of these other angles. I think that was 57 or 50.
There's prime quadruplets. Those are very special sets of numbers.
Let me see if I can find it here myself.
Well, you know what? We're almost to the 4-hour mark. I haven't eaten dinner yet, so
yeah, absolutely.
You got to.
I'm meant to be swimming on Bondi Beach, and I'm talking to you guys, and I need to get on a plane in 2 hours.
Well, we're honored
every minute of it, Bob.
That was amazing, and man, I won't take up any more of your time. You're on.
Okay, there's a site called Angel 37. It says the number 37 meaning in numerology. It's a sign that
universe is giving you full
support.
Yeah, let's do this again later for sure.
I'm glad that this was an awesome collaboration. I'm glad we got a number of eggheads together in this room, so it's great.
Look at that. That's cool.
Wow, what am I looking at there, Bernie?
Pure zinc anodes, and showing that in the electrolysis water, how they seem to be in the circular corrosion pattern.
Was that from just now?
No, these have I've run in the past. Usually it takes about 6 hours to do that.
Does everybody here have their own lab? Is that Michael? Are you in your own lab right now?
Yep.
Awesome, man.
Then I just also quickly wanted to state this right here is I hooked up the pure copper triple bagel coil, just one of them, and it's just to a cathode negative 5 volt AC. But and then I've got just a 3 solenoid wire copper anode that's corroding away at the top, and that this is all white monoatomic copper that has formed and it's proceeding down where it's starting to condense at the very bottom there, and that there's still about 2 to 3 inch exclusion zone at the very base between where the monatomics are precipitating and where they're in the water coming down between that exclusion zone. And that the biggest issue with creating this stuff is that more often than not, it won't be white, it will be blue, which is then oxidized, which then completely ruins the material purpose of it, and then in fact actually makes it toxic for anyone that wants to like play with their lives in danger. And usually you see these blue people from trying to take the monoatomic silver, but it's diatomic, and they've accumulated vast amounts of heavy metal poisoning toxins of taking in this oxidized pure metal that is blue. And that's the difference between making the monoatomic and the oxidized diatomic particles.
So they went full Smurf is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. So the Smurfs and the aliens, because the demigods, right? They supposedly had these monatomic golds, and they were all blue and flying and whatnot. Who knows? But they had the oxidized. I don't know. Maybe it means you eat it, you die, then you fly away with your spirit. Who knows?
That guy that turned blue from eating the colloidal silver supplements and stuff. That was pretty crazy.
He looked like Papa Smurf. That guy. He had gray hair or bluish gray. He looked like Papa Smurf. He really did.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
He really did.
Guys, I'm going to have to say thank you, Bernie. Thanks for inviting me on, Jeremy. Thanks for coordinating this, Bernie. I should probably know more about alchemy given the fact I work in Lena. But Ashton, Michael, fantastic. Shane Dave's not here. Gerald, really appreciate you always. I need to go.
Check out the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project on YouTube. That's Bob Greenyer's channel. I'll post a link to it in the description below. And thank you everyone who participated, and have a great rest of your holiday there. And we'll talk to you in the New Year.
Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Safe travels.
Happy Christmas.
Bob. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year.
Bye, guys.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Have a great one, everybody.
And Jeremy, get us in touch.
Ashton. Yeah, I will definitely get you guys in touch. And Ashton was asking about our labs and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to give you guys a little.
Sorry I was so busy. I missed the whole thing practically. Still working in the lab.
Keep up the hard work, man.
Nice setup there, Jeremy. Cool.
Yeah, well,
all right, I'm going to bail out, guys. See you later. Bye.
Safe travels, Bob. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everybody watching this now, watching this, in the future, in 2024, and take this knowledge, this development in this science and disclosure in 2024, real disclosure. But let's actually start opening portals. Let's get into this transmedia technology, the anti-gravity, the free energy. Jeremy, you're muted if you're trying to speak, brother. No,
he's just showing us the lab.
Absolutely.
My only question is,
lab.
If we crack the hole open, who's the first to jump through? Is it going to be Jeremy?
Well, so who's that guy?
Maybe Michael.
The guy that, oh man, there's the story. It's on Y-Files. He called.
What's that?
Yeah, I was just watching
the
that
guy, the time
when we
portal
crack the door, who's the first to walk through? Is it going to be Michael, Jeremy? I mean, who's volunteering to go through the hole?
What's going on?
We'll draw short straws for it.
First, we put the couch. Then there's the couch with the cat, and then we gotta find that guy and interview him if he's still alive and see what he's got to say. Well, whatever. Frick, I can't remember the name.
Well, we have a whole nother floor with a maker space, like a whole machine shop and like other stuff. I don't know if you guys want to see all that, but
wow.
Yes, we do. If the FBI wanted to take special interest, why wouldn't we?
Yeah. Well, they haven't visited this one yet. So
okay.
But, well, that we know of. We have had a few interesting
people. You're with
just show up and ask questions and start, hey, what are you guys doing here?
Once we
You
build
guys
our
have the
particle
whole
accelerator.
Well, I think his thing froze. Sometimes when you move around here, you lose connection. But yeah, there was one guy who came through who was a Rothschild. That was pretty nuts.
All right, I'm switching. Sorry, I had to switch. It switches Wi-Fi because there's a different Wi-Fi on this floor.
You had Rothies creeping.
You guys have the whole building,
young or
what's...
old?
So
Yeah, I'm with. Yeah, do you guys have the whole building?
no, I
spacious.
rent that. It's a shared space. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a lot of people that make. There's a fabric shop here with screen printers and nylon cutters, vinyl cutters and stuff.
That's amazing and epic. That's what I'm about to start setting back up myself in January.
Is there a 3D printer there somewhere?
Yeah, I just showed the 3D printer labs downstairs. There's other ones up here too. This is the metal shop. This is our vacuum furnace where we making the LK99 samples and other stuff.
Yeah, and also some antimony aluminum bismuth semiconductor. It's a direct bandgap semiconductor.
Plasma CNC.
It's not an aerogel though, right? Like it's more like a transistor.
No, you can use it. You can use this one for terahertz photonics and you can use it for all sorts. The direct bandgap semiconductors. Well, actually, you don't always want a direct bandgap. There are certain applications where but yeah, usually for photonics you want a direct bandgap. Although for terahertz, you actually want the vibrational coupling, because then you get the coupling to phonons, and that gives you high nonlinearities, which allows you to do computation more easily. Like the transistor is a highly nonlinear device. That's why it works. So you want high optical nonlinearity for a device for computation.
And that's a cool space you guys have there. So you can just come in and out whenever you want, or do you have to go when other people aren't there?
Yeah, I rent it. We rent it, so we can come in here. There's a little community table, a bunch of tools people can use and stuff.
Wow,
that is literally like my dream shop right there.
Oh no, check this out! You don't even know, Bernie. Look what we can do over here, man.
Yeah, we'll have to have a meetup.
Glass blower.
No,
I'm gonna have to come down there.
Is that a bowl? What is that?
But you can make anything. It's a little mushroom that somebody made.
We want it hollow, but with some of this ormus or noble gases in there, and then put it in the center of the coils and take it to the Walter Russell next level of transmutation.
I should send you my design for a glass battery I'm working on. That's interesting.
So I just talked to the directors of this floor and stuff, and we're gonna set their computer area is like criminally underutilized. It's terrible.
Oh wow!
And they have actually the oldest Linux meetup group in the country meets here.
Really?
And they're like the only ones that use this space. But so I've been talking to them about setting it up for a podcasting lab.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah.
With them in it, that's as OG as you can get.
And I'm gonna run the classes here on it to teach people how to do it and set it up. So
you got silk screening there as well. Like I am gonna have to come spend some time there in 2024.
You come check it out. So that's not everything. So here's a whole bunch of like random electronic parts and supplies. You can just you can use any of this. This stuff is like up for grabs. They got 2 electronic table benches, some power supplies, multimeters, other test equipment, soldering irons, all that kind of stuff. We got immersion 3D printer lab, and also, extrusion 3D printers.
Well, I couldn't build there. Wow.
Oh, and you haven't seen the laser lab.
Yeah, show us the goods, man. Show us the goods.
So check this stuff out. You can all this stuff was made with the laser CNC cutter, and you can do metamaterials. You can to say what you want for the burn. This is the computer where you program it all, and you can kind of like set it up so if you want it to burn all the way through, the power and the exposure rate.
That is epic.
That you want to do intervals, passes.
Those
that's the laser table right there, guys. Yeah, so we got some
Nice.
epic stuff that you can.
This guy here.
People make some cool stuff here, dude. So yeah, this place is pretty capable. We also got the, another wood shop in here with CNC router table and some lathes and stuff, and a glove box for sandblasting and sanding and stuff too. So yeah, and then the kitchen area too. And but yeah, this is tons of cool stuff what you can do here. So I'm glad I gave you guys a tour.
That was a sweet tour, man. Thanks a lot, Jeremy.
That's as epic as the song that you started the last episode out with, brother.
Yeah, that song is great.
I gotta practice it and make it come out. It could come out much better.
Oh yeah, we're gonna re-record. We're gonna freaking re-record that in studio, and get some doubles, triples, get like some chick singing or a chorus or something. Like
some bongos.
Get it mixed, mastered at the very least. Do it professional. I will do it while I'm down there, or we'll get it done. It's happening. All right,
sure, man. We got the lab here, man. We get the cooperation of the whole community and everybody online. This community is only growing. Don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button, and send me an email if you want to link up or anything, man. I'm open here to exposing the truth and digging in and just forcing the government to have new investigations of all this stuff. This stuff should have had investigations long ago. It needs to all be reopened and reinvestigated, as far as I'm concerned, because I sure as heck don't believe in magic bullets or that the Pentagon just lost $2.3 trillion the day before 9/11. So there's a lot of things that just never been answered, man, and I would love to get answers to. So keep up the good fight, and we're destroying the official narrative on so many different levels, guys. Just keep sharing and keep put posting information out there, and that's all we can do is and keep the science up. The more you learn science, the more you educate yourself and equip yourself with an understanding of logical fallacies, how to dissect arguments, how to be able to, what falsifiability is, and being skeptical. It's going to help arm all of us in the fight for truth and the fight against these lies. So mistakes are always made. Everyone's human here, and crush stream, man. You're absolutely right. Thank you all for being here. You guys rock, and we are the government. Let's take it back. Exactly. And we're more competent than anything that I've seen from the government in their discussions of UFOs. Is just got nothing on the people that I talk to every day and bring on this channel. And that's going to continue and just get better. So thank you for staying with us. And you guys rock more. So
thanks a lot, Jeremy. This was awesome. Everybody, make sure you like this stream. Make sure you follow Jeremy. Make sure you're following, and
everybody follow everybody here, because we're live on Ashton Forbes channel, on AlienScientist channel, on Crypto Alchemist channel, and maybe more. I'm not sure.
Jeremy, plug we have the eBay store now.
APEC tomorrow too. So eBay store is up online too. So check us out on eBay. I'll post.
We got that, and
we got the Super Force shirts.
Super short Force shirts. You gotta show them.
Yes.
We got to get what do you call it? We have the magnesium bismuth composites we're making. We'll put that up there. Why not?
You're selling them?
Sure, why not? I mean, it's easy to make.
Yeah.
Everyone says, "Oh, this is so difficult to make." I'm going to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll buy some.
Heck yeah.
I'll buy some.
Michael makes anything. I'm just like, he's like, yeah, we can make that. I'm like,
I'm gonna buy some too.
Michael is the material man.
Send me a link to that. I'll post it on my Twitter.
You ever see that sketch from Portlandia? We could pickle that.
That's great.
I love it. All right, shall we play the disclosure song to close her out one last time?
I guess so, man. I wish I could do a better. I gotta re-record it.
This is as a first copy, like just playing your heart out, like not rehearsing it. Like it's epic. Don't worry about it. Like round two, when we actually record it properly, like it's gonna be a hit by the time it's done. This is the free
all
version.
headed, y'all? This is headed towards the stars, man, and beyond, where Tom DeLonge promised to bring you, but never followed through. And we're tired of those people. So we're showing you how it's really done. And Tom, you better be paying attention and taking notes, because Tom DeLonge was wrong. Came along with that cron, and the strongest cron that you ever heard of in a song. Do any of them ever pick it up and actually play it? Who wants to hear me play a Christmas song?
I know I do.
All right. Metamaterials. Can these things work miracles? Perfectly spherical, like a rich